Evening, guys. Right, got a very interesting project saw to show people, and had several messages from people that are wanting to do their own project saw on a vintage saw from start to finish, and what type of saws did I have which I was still working on, or what saws was I going to let any of them go out unworked on. And so I thought, well, it's really interesting because I have a huge number of project saws which they either have huge historical value to me, or they might have some really interesting electrics or part of the ignition or part of the fueling which is just different, and you just want to get into them and have a look. You kind of build a rounded picture up across American saws through your European saws through to, to the more British saws. And so McCulloch is a brand which I don't have that many saws of. I only have around maybe a dozen McCulloch saws now, maybe a couple more, 12 or 14 McCulloch saws, and they've got really interesting history as well. McCulloch started with, what's the gentleman's name? I should know his name. It's my name, Robert Paxton. And they started just towards the tail end of the Second World War, 1943, and make some amazing saws. So I thought, well, let's show some of my big project saws, the condition they're in, chat a little bit about the history, and yeah, maybe some of these saws, if they're suitable for one of you guys out there and you want to put your own footprint or your own stamp on something, untouched, then yes, I have a number of saws like that. Yeah, so interesting. McCulloch then, Paxton, I'm sure they started in 43, and his first saw was a behemoth, a monster, was a what was that? Is that 547 or a 549? I'm thinking it's what they class a 547, might be 549. Big thing, 130 pounds, 130 cc's, and 50 odd pounds in weight for the power head, and depending upon the bar, I think they could run up to a typically loads of those saws around that period, a 5-foot bar. They had a handle on at the end to support, be up to 60 pounds in weight, a real monster. And then some 1940, yeah, that was definitely 48. Actually, some places list that wrong. They list that as a 1949 saw. That is actually incorrect. That's a 1948 model saw. And the devil's in the detail, because if you don't get the start dates, you can't figure out where they've developed from and how they've moved. So this saw then, McCulloch, is ever so, again, rare girl, only made for 1 year. This is the 172, made from 61 to 62. Absolute thumper of a piston, 54mm piston. One of the shorter stroke ones. Some of the later ones they do, were 100 cc's. This one's running a 38mm stroke. So this is an 87, 88, nominal 87 cc saw. Absolute gorgeous. And I brought a few other saws out, which, not specifically for date, but for the footprint of the saw and the weight of the saw. So this girl then is, well, she's celebrating either 60 or 61 years this year. Isn't it incredible? Running a 30-inch bar, longest one supplied, I think, 30-inch. Just a gorgeous constructed saw with these very basic rubber mounts at the top of this handle, this stainless steel strap across the top, manual oiler, choke, these two levers opposite or adjacent to the kill switch in the middle. And so yeah, around 35 pounds in weight. And then putting her in perspective weight wise, where would be the lightest one? Okay, so something like the a steel 51, 52mm piston from 1972, 89 cc's, and this girl comes in with a 25-inch bar, around 26 pounds in weight, and spectacular, as we know. Amazing engines. And 26, yeah, okay. So the Pioneer 650, again, mid-60s sold, just around mid-60s, went for a number of years, maybe 10 plus years this manufactured for. This runs a 57mm piston, 103 cc's, so bigger displacement than the Mac. This girl is around the 13 kilos, so around 28 pounds in weight. A couple of pounds heavier than the 51. And then, one of my beautiful early DD8Fs, the Daniels brothers, Daniels and Daniels, running a Villiers engine, 50mm piston, 50mm stroke, and this is with the 22-inch bar, half-inch pitch. This comes at 30 pounds, almost 30 pounds dead. And then, there's the McCulloch, which comes in at just around 35 to 36 pounds. So, just spectacular build. Just spectacular build. And it's interesting, isn't it? So piston-wise then, 50, 52, 54, 57mm on the Pioneer. But the weight of this is just a gorgeous professional forestry saw in its day. The back end of the silencer is the actual foot which it sits on. So it looks, you think, wow, it looks like a huge piece of steel pipe, and it is, because it sits on the ground and it supports it. And have a very unusual bar tensioning system on the old Macs. Unlike a conventional stud, which would, or pin, it would push through the bar and then drag it forward. The original McCulloch bars have a crescent-shaped cutout milled into the side of the bar, so it's just like a round, almost just like a thick round washer, just sits in that groove, just like a crescent of a moon shape. It just snugs into the bar, and it's ever so elegant. And so there's no actual hole through the guide bar. It's just this very, very slight crescent milled groove in the base of the bar. So she's running the original McCulloch bar, and 60 years old, manual oiler working. And the only thing that this girl came from a lovely guy, and she was stationary in a workshop, dry off the ground, for over 30 years. And has no spark, hasn't been worked on in that regard. The flywheel hasn't been off, the clutch hasn't been off. She was purchased with the guide bar. I collected her like that. And the only thing I have done in my ownership is, because we thought she was seized, was I took off the pull start housing just to establish the condition of the engine. Took off the pull start housing, and it was the aluminium pulley wheel which was seized, and freed that up. Didn't like the heads were really bad on the 3 bolts on the outside, so that's got some hardened steel cap heads, so they're not American threaded, but they're the correct length. And that just enabled me to just check that she pulls over with ferocious compression. And so that's how she's sat. So she's a project saw in waiting, if you like, for somebody that wants an amazing 60-year-old saw where no one's taken off the clutch cover, no one's taken off the flywheel, everything around the saw looks complete. Virtually, I'm not sure if there's any brakes on this saw whatsoever. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Air filter present, all mag alloy construction. The exhaust shroud is really, really lovely exhaust shroud. We undo this single bolt, and the entire back aluminium cover just comes across maybe 3 or 4 mil, unhooks, and then exposes the spark plug. So it's just an impressive piece of engineering. So it's strange where I've out of lots of the makes of saws I have, it just goes to show geography plays a huge part in it, because undoubtedly if I lived in America I would have a load of McCullochs. I would. They're just impressive machines, but lots of these really early big saws, we just don't see them in the UK, or I certainly don't see them, but nonetheless they're incredibly impressive. Just so impressive. Okay guys, so there's one. I'm going to photograph this girl, post a few pictures online, and love to hear any feedback, and be interesting to hear just how many people really are interested in a project saw from start to finish, where you just do everything, but you're starting off with a great base, which is an unmarked piston or a really clean piston. You're starting with great compression, and the rest is you can put your own stamp on a piece of history, so to speak, because some people like to leave the paint. I love to leave the paint the way it is. Some people would love to take this and then, because everything else is so good, and then start to refurbish her and put her back with an original paint scheme, and then so the choice would be down to the individual. So that's one of my beautiful project saws. That's the McCulloch 172. So perhaps we'll do a few like this, and then interesting actually, think about McCulloch's first saw. That's 57. Yeah, so 547, 540. Thought I had it for a second then. 57 mil. That runs the same piston, interestingly, as the Pioneer, but very big stroke. McCulloch's first saw, Robert Paxton. Yeah, that was a 57 mil piston with a 51 mil stroke. Absolute thumper. Anyway, guys, a selection of my beautiful old girls, right? Take care.